Hello, blissful parents. Michelle Abraham, your host here today. You guys, I'm so excited for this interview. We have a dear friend of mine, Candace Plattor, here with us. So, hey, Candace, how are you doing today?
Hi, Michelle. Hi, everyone. I was just going to say, just starting off, that I have a little bit of hoarseness in my throat, so please just bear with me
No
today.
problem. You sound fantastic. So it's all
Oh, good.
good.
Okay.
Let me tell our blissful parents a little bit more about you, Candace. So, Candace is an addictions therapist in a private practice where she specializes in working with the families and other loved ones of people struggling with addiction. In her unique and signature program, Family Addictions Counseling and Therapy Program. She's a former opioid addict with almost 35 years clean and sober. Candace has learned that overcoming addiction is a family condition, that everyone in the family is affected by the addiction and everyone needs to heal. For more than 3 decades, she's been helping both addicts and their loved ones understand their dysfunctional behaviors and make healthier life choices. So, Candice, this is so fascinating. And today I really wanted to bring you on and really discuss like what are some of the possible warning signs that your kid or your child is heading towards in that direction. And I know this conversation might be a little bit beyond some of our school age kids. Parents, but some of our school age parents of school age kids have kids that are a little bit older as well. And I
Mm.
think sometimes those signs, and you can tell us because you're the expert, sometimes some of these things we can actually start seeing earlier, even earlier on, right?
Yes. Yes. So, yes, I was aware that I was going to be talking with parents today of younger children than I usually deal with.
Right.
But, um, but it's starting so much younger now. And so it's really good for parents to be just aware of what they might want to be looking for. If you're feeling like something's different with your child, I think you want to trust that instinct and just check it out. Um, the usual suspects in terms of how children let you know that there's something wrong
Mm-hmm.
is when there start to be mood swings. That's one of the first things that you notice. And that's with kids who don't usually show those kinds of mood swings. Um, I mean, as children get older, their job is to individuate.
Mm-hmm.
So, what they want to do is tell you to leave them alone so they can be by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's normal. But when that's kind of thing keeps happening, when somebody's isolating,
Mm-hmm.
when a child is isolating, or when um, maybe they're hanging out with different kids than they used to hang out with,
Right.
or they're just not quite themselves, you know that's something to trust in yourself, that you're seeing something different.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like when they're switching up friend groups, or and I know for girls, especially like around grade 6, like that there's a big change in friendship that usually happens in grade 6. I'm not sure why grade 6, but it just seems to be very common. Like they're 10, 11 years old, or maybe a little older than that, 12, 13. I can't remember how old they are in grade 6, but there's something
Yeah.
around that age group for girls too. So change in friends, I think, is something that's very easy to kind of see that change in moods. Now, it's hard to say the mood swings and like the isolation because sometimes now kids are so like they want to come home from school, get on their devices, and go hang out in their room, right? So,
Yeah.
how is
And
that to get? It's hard to like kind of decipher. Is that normal or is that
well,
not normal?
if that's what's been happening and
Mm,
that's been the normal in your family,
mm,
then yeah, that's going to be normal. But if it exacerbates, if it gets
right.
more, they don't want to talk to you at all, and they're being lippy and rude, and you know
Mm,
when things like that start to change, that's when you need to step in and kind of nip it in the bud. So another thing is when grades start to fall,
mm,
because if kids are involved with drugs or alcohol or too much social media or anything that you can sort of say as addictive, that
mhm.
that other things are going to fall by the wayside. when
Right.
addiction comes in. You can't kind of do addiction and something else well.
Right.
So, when that's happening, you want to take note of that. And what you were saying, Michelle, about especially girls who are in grade 6-ish. Yeah, that's 11, 12. And um, I'm so glad that I'm not a young child in this day and age,
Yeah.
honestly. It just feels so confusing to me as an adult. I can only imagine what it feels like as a child. And what happens with girls, it's a little bit different for boys. They're programmed a little differently from media. But what happens with girls is all these music videos are coming out, and social media stuff that they're supposed to start being sexier at age 11.
Right. Scary.
Like, something is wrong with this picture. They don't,
Yeah.
they, when a child is that young, they don't really comprehend what that's all about. They're just going along with the trends, and that can get girls into an awful lot of trouble.
Right.
So it may be something to talk to your girl about, your daughter. And but it's hard, because your daughter wants to fit in with everybody else. She
Right.
wants to be cool. Yeah,
Yeah, I remember in grade 6 myself, I was like had two groups of friends, my soccer friends and the girls that were like the cool girls at
the
school,
cool
but they were kind
girls.
of like testing things like smoking and things like that. And I remember they came to me one recess and they're like, you have to choose, you can't be friends with them and us. And I was like, well, fine, then that makes the choice really obvious. I'm gonna be friends with my
Yeah,
soccer friends because they would
yeah,
never make me choose.
exactly, exactly. But not all girls have that kind of emotional intelligence to be able to
Right.
make that choice and see why to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can see how easily you can get sucked into the wrong path because, at that next school dance, there was not a single person that asked me to dance. Whereas the one before, I had a lineup of guys asking me to dance. So it's just funny how, like, that social situation changes so quickly, right?
Yeah, and I like what you're saying, because that kind of thing hurts.
Hmm.
It hurts. And so when children hurt and they don't have another way to deal with it,
Yeah.
often what they do is start experimenting with mind altering substances, for
Right.
example, like pot, maybe, or alcohol, and then harder drugs, because addiction has what we call tolerance.
Mhm.
And what tolerance means is that to be able to get the same feeling, to be able to get the same hit, they need more.
Mhm. Mhm.
So they may start with pot and move on to Coke,
Right.
just to get a bigger buzz, a bigger hit. So yeah, and so when children don't have an outlet for how they're feeling inside, what they may decide to do is numb, stuff down what they're feeling inside.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And maybe like when they stopped like wanting to be interested in the sports they were playing too, and not as interested in, being outside and active like they used to.
Yeah, because what I said before is that you can't be doing
Hmm.
addiction of any kind, whether it's television or it's social media or it's chocolate, which I have a problem with, you
Yeah.
know. Um, we can't really be doing addiction and doing something else well. So we make a decision about our priorities. And when kids really start to get involved in that culture, other things fall by the wayside. They just do.
Right.
Yeah.
What are some things that, if parents are noticing some of these things happening, what would you suggest to be like the first things that we do?
I think the first thing to do would be to talk to your child. And I know that some parents have a really hard time doing that. Some parents have really good relationships with their kids, and they
Mhm.
they talk easily, and they have been doing that their whole lives, and that's really great. Other parents don't have as much of that going on, and it's not that that's wrong. I'm not saying that, if you don't talk to your kids well, that, you're a bad parent. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But what I am saying is that if you want your child to make a change in what they're doing, you're going to have to make a change in what you're doing. And that's probably going to have to come first. So you're going to have to challenge yourself to start having conversations and dialogues and listening, not just talking, but listening to what your kids are saying. Because if they're getting into addiction, there's something wrong in their lives. There's something wrong in the way they're feeling.
Mhm.
And if that's not addressed, it almost always gets worse.
Right.
It's
Yes,
not it's not necessarily just a phase
right.
that they're going through, because if it's a substance, if it's a behavior that they're using, like shopping or something like that, that could be a phase they're going through. Could be.
Mhm.
Or they could wind up having a lot of money issues later in life. But if it's something mind altering,
Mhm.
then that doesn't get better, because physically the body gets addicted. And it's so much harder to change something that you're doing when you're physically and psychologically addicted to it. And all your friends are doing it.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, in school, my son is in grade 4, and they're having body science classes in school, but I feel like they haven't really addressed addictions in school. And I'm not sure
Yeah.
if is that something that they do address in school, or is that kind of up to the parents too? I guess I should know as a parent, as an
Well,
almost 10-year-old, I should probably know if we have to have these conversations ourselves, or is it something they do in school? Or we probably the answer is probably to do both.
yeah. Well, I used to be a teacher in
Mhm.
kind of a different lifetime of mine. Um, I was a teacher for about 10 years of elementary and junior secondary.
Mhm.
I was a drama teacher, so I really got
Oh,
to know the
fun.
kids
Yeah.
really well.
Yeah.
Um, that was a while ago, though, and they weren't, addiction wasn't on the radar then.
Mhm.
Um, and so they weren't talking about anything like that then. We were lucky if we got any sex ed stuff
Mhm.
going on. But I would hope, see, I don't know the answer to that
Yeah.
question, but I would hope that uh, my hope is that people aren't scared of talking about addiction, because the only way that we really can stop addiction is by not keeping the
Right.
secret of addiction. Our secrets keep us sick.
Right.
And if we don't want to talk about that, like if we don't want to talk about sex, then our kids are definitely going to have sex, and they're going to have it unprotected, and it's
Right.
going to be a mess,
And they're
right?
not going to
But if we
know and not going to
and
be
you're
educated.
not going to know, because it's not going to be talked about. And it's the same with addiction.
Right.
So there's a difference sometimes. I don't want to alarm people about this, because kids go to parties, especially,
Mhm.
grade 8 up. They go to
Yeah.
parties. There's pot at the parties. It's legal in Canada.
Hmm.
Don't get me started on that, but it is. It's legal. It's
It soon,
addictive.
probably soon will be in the US too.
Yep.
It's not far
And
behind. Yeah.
it is an addictive drug. It was one of the drugs that I used, and it's addictive. But they go to parties, and everybody's smoking and everybody's drinking, and that's just how it is. That doesn't mean that their grades are going to suffer. It doesn't mean that their lives are going to fall apart.
Mhm.
But for some kids, it might mean that.
Right.
And you don't really know whether your kid's going to be that child that has a problem or not.
Yeah, I mean, I
So,
guess there's a fine line between like dabbling and trying things, at the weekends, at the parties, and then it being like a regular thing.
yeah. And what I'll say about that is that it's really not the addiction. It's not the substance or the behavior that's really the issue. What's really the issue in addiction is what's underneath it.
Mhm.
It's why people need to use it in the first place. What's
Yeah,
the pain involved? Maybe your child is suffering from some bullying or some kind of trauma that they're not telling you about.
right,
Maybe they're ashamed to come home and say, I was beaten up today, or
right.
somebody laughed at me in class, or that kind of thing. And when that continues to happen, then we want to stuff that down. Nobody likes to feel those feelings. So we stuff them down, we stuff them down. And that's really the issue. It isn't so much, you know, what you're smoking or what you're drinking or how much, or it's really what is the pain that's underneath that need to do that. So this is where dialogue is really important. And hopefully in the school that your children are going to, there are good counselors.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Candace, you're an author of the book Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself, the top
Yes,
10
can
survival
I show
tips.
it? Yeah,
Yes,
here
the
it
top
is.
10 survival tips for someone with an addiction. So,
For loving someone with an addiction,
for
for
loving someone
loving.
with an,
So
for loving
so
someone.
this book is for the loved ones. It's for parents
Yes.
and siblings and grandparents and uncles and aunts who are concerned about a child. It's not for the addicts themselves. The addicts don't like my book, just so you know, because we're talking about boundaries and consequences and things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's great. And you've given that as a gift, free chapter for our listeners today. So we
Yes.
appreciate that. Thank you so much. Tell us a little bit more
Yes.
about the book.
The book really gives a lot of tips, a lot of strategies for dealing with this kind of thing, and it's there are there are 10 tips, and there's some other information in there as well to um, when somebody is involved in addiction, for you to be able to what we want, sorry, I'm kind of tripping on myself here,
Okay.
but what we want to do is stop any kinds of enabling behaviors. I'll define that in a minute, but enabling behaviors, because enabling behaviors on your part will keep your child stuck in addiction. So what you want to do is learn how to actually help your child come out of addiction or not get into it in the first place when you start seeing these warning signs. So, enabling, just a really simple definition, is when we do something for another person that they can and should be doing for themselves. And when we do that on a continuous basis, like an example I use is children not learning how to do their own laundry.
Mm.
And when parents keep doing the laundry for a child, just as an example, when you keep doing their laundry and they don't learn how to do it, sometimes they get this feeling of a lack of resiliency within themselves. And they might start to think, well, mom or dad keeps doing my laundry for me because they don't really think I can do it myself.
Interesting.
And so we don't want to set those patterns up. We want to teach kids activities of daily living. We want to teach them
Right.
how to cook. We want to teach them how to clean up. We want to teach them those kinds of things and believe in their resiliency,
Yeah.
rather than setting the bar so low for them that we do everything for them.
Right. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So good. So congratulations on, I see your book also won an award. So congratulations. That's
Yes,
awesome.
it's won several USA and international book awards, and I like to tell people that I was stuck in addiction for about 15 years. I was an opioid addict. I uh, have Crohn's disease, and when I was diagnosed with that in the 70s, the doctors did not know what to do for me. It was a disease they didn't know really much about. So they just kept giving me addictive medications. And addiction wasn't on the radar then. So
Right.
they gave me a lot of Valium medications. They gave me OxyContin and codeine and morphine and Demerol and all. They just wanted to get me out of their office because I was miserable and crying and in pain all the time. So this is what they did. And anybody's body would get addicted to those drugs, and mine did. So
Yeah.
I was basically an opioid addict for 15 years. And then I made a decision to stop doing that. And that's what it takes to stop an addiction, is making that choice, because life just gets so bad. You make that choice. And when families set boundaries, when families say to addicts, we love you so much. We love you so much that we don't want to support your addiction anymore because we don't want you to be in that
Mhm.
place.
Mhm.
We will support your recovery from addiction, but we won't support your addiction anymore. No more money, no more this, no more that. I talk about that in my book a lot. And for people who are listening, your children may not be addicted at this point, and hopefully never will be.
Mhm.
Um, but you may have other family members,
Right.
because today, the way addiction is so rampant, it's like everybody either is affected by somebody else's addiction or they know somebody who is.
Right. Scary, isn't it? Wow. Well, Candice, this has been like fabulous to have you here. And thank you so much for your expertise. You have so much expertise and knowledge around this topic. And we really appreciate you bringing
Sure.
that to the podcast today. Any last words for our parents out there before we wrap it up today?
The only thing I would say is if you do sense that there's a problem, if you think there's a problem, then there probably is. Please trust yourself.
Mhm.
Don't give up. Don't think that it's so overwhelming that you can't handle it. One of the reasons that I work with the families is because there's so little help out there for families. There's a lot of help for people who are addicted, but very little help for the families. And we can help you at lovewithboundaries.com. You can come to our website, take a look, get in touch with me. We offer a free 30-minute Zoom consultation, and we'd be happy to talk with you about what's going on and how we might be able to help. There is help out there for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Candice, for being here with us today. Blissful parents, please reach out to Candice if you need some support. And until next week, go out there and have a blissful week. Thanks again.